And we're live.
MAGA's over.
Yeah, it didn't last long, did it?
Have you had your disillusionment moment yet?
Nope.
No? You're still holding out?
I'm holding out for hope.
Well, you two had it easy because you were, quote, nonplussed from day one. I was like, wow.
To him, but he's American.
I know.
Yeah, I don't...
He can't help it. It's in his DNA.
Yeah, the forever optimist. It's the American way.
Yeah. So you're still the band's going to make it?
I think it's possible. I think it's possible that the band's going to make it, but it's going to be a rough time, and
they'll only get half of what they promised, or something like that. Will you settle for half?
I'll settle for 3/4.
Okay. Anything less is disappointment.
Yeah.
And anything less is a failure.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got high standards.
No, it's not that bad. But yeah, it's gonna take serious disillusionment, and the band's gonna have to break up in a sense where Trump's gonna have to part ways with some of his friendos that wear the funny hats.
Oh,
who's that?
Oh.
I'm not gonna say what group.
Mm.
Yeah,
he's gonna have to do that.
Yeah,
it's not gonna happen.
I know.
Well, Steve Witkoff's okay. He's a friend. You know, one of the group, but you know, the group actually apparently doesn't like him at all because he's sincere.
Who doesn't like him?
I think it was Israeli ministers who weren't happy with Witkoff's contribution.
Oh, with Witkoff?
Yeah.
But Trump. They love Trump.
Whoa.
Well, they never stop, they never shut up saying how he's the greatest president for Israel ever. They love him. To the moon and back. They keep on saying that. Netanyahu.
As long as he keeps up what he's doing, though.
Oh, he is.
But remember, Netanyahu's the same guy who recognized Biden's victory like on day 3 or 4 in 2020, right after the election. When Putin waited until the Electoral College in early December to congratulate Biden on winning. And that stuck with Trump, you know. From that day, he bitched about it at the time.
So you're saying it's just all fake? It's all on the surface?
It's
5D chess?
No,
chess?
But it's as long as Trump is super, super pro-Israel. And it's looking that way. There is no 4D chess. Look, they're bombing the shit out of the Houthis. You know, that's for Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is it only though? Because his gripe about it is the lack of U.S. ships that can go through the Red Sea.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, there are other signs. It's not just about geopolitics. It's domestic too. I mean, a key plank of domestic MAGA is undoing censorship. First Amendment, you know, got the Second Amendment to protect the First Amendment. That's the whole basis of raw MAGA. And then there's no anti-Semitism. Shut up, or deported or fired.
Exactly. What's that all about? I mean, how can you? What other president has done as much to clamp down for Israel, to clamp down on anti-Semitism? The one thing, the old canard of anti-Semitism to protect Israel. Nobody's allowed to say a bad word about Israel. What president has done more on that score than Trump? None.
Well, it's not out of the blue. He's continuing what began under Biden.
Yeah, but he's doubling down on it.
Yeah.
He's going to deport people like this guy, Mohammed. They're all called Mohammed, aren't they?
Yeah.
What's his name? Khalil.
Khalil.
Someone with a green card.
Mahmoud Khalil. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not Mahmoud. Mahmoud. It's all the same, right? Anyway, the green card holder. You know, so basically, you know, American, legally in America.
Yeah.
No question. And he was arrested and abducted into the bowels of some ice facility. What do you call it? Is it called freedom? Is that called freedom, Adam? Is that MAGA freedom? Is that how MAGA defines freedom? Just because he said some not nice things about Israel, maybe? Come on, I mean, defend your MAGA here. What about bombing Houthis? Here's another question. What about bombing the Houthis? Bunch of children and women killed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, is that MAGA too? And how does that square with Trump wanting to end the Ukraine war because all those poor soldiers dying? Oh, I just want to stop the killing. Hang on a minute. I got to stop focusing on Ukraine for a minute. I got to kill some children in Yemen.
I know.
MAGA? Really?
I know.
Fuck Trump.
I never started the war.
Oh, it's harsh.
That's harsh, Joe.
I'm with AOC.
That's harsh. Oof.
That's even harder.
That's
hard to take.
That's gross.
Stings. My eyes are burning. Here's the.
So they have launched airstrikes.
It was yesterday, yeah.
Okay.
It was yesterday. I think it was yesterday, last night.
I thought he was just, threatening it and about to, but...
No.
Trump orders first Yemen airstrikes in his golfing shirt and a MAGA hat. There you go. Oh. That's all MAGA's about. You got that, Damien? There he is. That's him at... let's close that for a second. Yeah. And he's supposedly at an unspecified location, but not that unspecified because it was at the Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. So in between rounds, he decided to launch some. And there's him. Look at the picture. You see, he's looking very seriously at the screen. Go on down a bit.
So
that's him waving goodbye. Yes, I launched some missiles at the Houthis. Now I'm going back to my golf. Waves from his limousine as he leaves his Florida golf resort on Saturday. Well, that was Saturday afternoon, and the one below that is him looking at a nice explosion on the screen. That explosion was huge.
Did he mention Israel? The ostensible reason is to protect U.S. shipping interests, right?
Yeah, because they fired at a couple of hundred different U.S. ships.
Well, also on the same day, if you want to go up a little bit, they're up to the picture before him in the limo. Paragraph before that. Also on Saturday, where have we got that? Why have you got a different one from me? Anyway, also on Saturday, the US president warned Iran to stop aiding the Houthis immediately, or the US would not be nice about it. And Iran responded by telling Trump that his threats would be met with a decisive response, should he choose to carry them out. And Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, called on the US to stop its attacks in Yemen in a phone call with Marco Rubio. The foreign ministry said, in response to argumentation put forward by American representatives, Sergei Lavrov stressed the need for an immediate cessation of the use of force and the importance for all sides to engage in political dialogue, like in Ukraine, Trump, so as to find a solution that would prevent further bloodshed. Now, that sounds like the diplomatic speech that Trump is largely incapable of. But that's the diplomatic speech that is pretty much what Trump is saying about Ukraine, which is interesting. So Trump says to Russia, you all need to come to the table in order to prevent further bloodshed and save the poor soldiers, etc., in Kursk, and engage in political dialogue. That's what Trump says to the Russians about Ukraine. So Russians respond to Trump after he fires missiles at Houthi, saying exactly the same thing, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
What's sauce for the goose is something for the gander.
Good for the goose, good for the gander.
Or whatever. Yeah. That thing. That phrase. That. Yeah, so...
and the first we heard about it was it's no longer a tweet. He posts on Truth Social now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's maybe that's all MAGA is. You get the same old stuff. It's just posted in all caps on Truth Social instead.
Well, it's like the domestic things change. Domestic things change, but the foreign policy stays the same. And that's...
Well, I don't know. I think foreign policy is different. Just on this article that we just had up, Mr. Hanesh, who is the a Houthi official, claimed that Trump was trying to take revenge on Tehran by claiming that Sana'a in Yemen is a Iranian arm. But he insisted that our decision is independent and Iran's influence is minimal. We are in a state of self-defense. The deputy head of the Houthi media office added, Sana'a will remain Gaza's shield and support and will not abandon it no matter the challenges. So the Houthis, like we've referred to them previously, like they're the Ewoks against the evil empire, and Trump is the emperor in Star Wars. How does that sting as well? So
you're saying there's a chance he
burn.
You're saying there's a chance he is literally Hitler. No, I'm kidding.
He's literally Hitler. He's Hitler and the Emperor from Star Wars rolled into one. We've been just deluded. It's been 8 years, and we've all been deluded by poor Adam.
I'm feeling very attacked right now.
Well, that's because you're too identified with MAGA.
Too identified?
Yeah. You're like, it's in my blood. How can I not identify with it?
I have a video of first strikes in Yemen, apparently hitting oil. Well, they would do that. They'd hit oil depots, energy sources. I presume. Well, maybe we shouldn't presume, but it's likely that Trump's wave of airstrikes will be more strictly military. But that's hard to say with American bombings. That'd be a first. Patrick Henningsen reports oil. Okay, they hit oil refining facilities in one of the ports. The excuse given is to defend Israel. Whose quote is that? I don't know. I don't think Trump's Truth Social post mentioned Israel at all.
No. But it's interesting. He says the US, the UK, and Israeli warplanes were engaged in it.
We're all involved as before.
So he says.
Yeah.
Who knows in the fog of war? But that's, I suppose, a kind of an alliance that something they can all agree on, right? Despite the
flow,
the rift between Trump and his erstwhile allies
over Ukraine
in Europe, over Ukraine. But I have something for you to hold on to, Adam. It's okay. I think this is all Trump just in a kind of somewhat feckless way going about a remaking of the global order. I've said this before on a few occasions on the show here, that it's basically a remaking of the global order. And he wants to, as people are saying, they want to pivot, let's say, to Asia. They want to redirect resources, military, economic, etc., to Asia, and to hell with Europe. So Trump looks at it and says, look, Europe should be able to handle this whole situation on its own. Russia and Europe over Ukraine, that whole thing is ridiculous. Those people on that part of the Eurasian continent should all just sort their shit out, and they should handle it themselves.
And it's Russia's sphere of influence.
And Russia should be respected as, the significant player, obviously, at least in terms of the major player, let's say on the Eurasian continent, or at least on the West Eurasian continent, in terms of individual countries. So that's kind of not giving much respect to the European Union and its supposed, the idea that it's some kind of a monolithic or unified structure. It's not really. Trump would probably be looking at them as, look, these ultimately are just independent countries. Yeah. There's a veneer of unity via the European Union, but that's falling apart. So in terms of independent countries in West Eurasia, Russia is the kind of unrivaled superpower. It has the most population. It has by far the major resources, and that's really what counts: population and resources. So he would defer to Russia, and that's why he's being accused of being
Putin's puppet.
And all that kind of stuff, which is just hot air, basically. He's just voicing a reality. But it's also interesting that Trump comes in and very quickly, even before he won the election last year, and since then he's been pushing really hard to wrap up that whole Ukraine war business. And generally speaking, historically, when countries that have that tendency to wage war to protect their interests, when they quickly wrap up a war, it's usually because they want to redeploy resources elsewhere, which coincides with the idea that they want to.
We saw that with Afghanistan.
Yeah, Afghanistan was a prelude to the Ukraine war. Let's get the hell out of Afghanistan because we just don't want that kind of like distraction in a certain sense. We got to put all of our focus on Ukraine, and now that's Trump's bringing that to an end. So he's going to pivot. Do you ever pivot?
Mm-hmm.
You pivot now and again, do you?
No.
You play basketball.
He's going to pivot to Asia. So
but that's what Obama said he wanted to do.
What? Pivot to Asia?
I suppose they all do.
They all want to pivot to Asia, except for me.
No, is Yemen, the Red Sea, Asia in that respect? It's Middle East. It seems classically the Middle East.
Well, no, there's
Israel.
Yeah, well, that's separate. It's obviously got something to do with. It's related to Iran.
Yes,
and trying to, but
not China.
No, but that's not really his focus. It's not his major focus, I suppose. But maybe it's a part of it. But again, anyway, even to focus on that to some extent, to focus on Iran and Yemen and stuff, to some extent, you'd have to wrap up the Ukrainian thing as quickly as possible. Redeploy the resources which are considerable resources, American resources that have been focused on Ukraine. Wrap all that up quickly, move towards the Middle East and elsewhere and Asia. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to start another war. They're not going to. I don't think they're going to start a war with China. I think. What's the phrase? Talk softly, but carry a big stick. Well, obviously, Trump's not stupid enough to just dismantle the U.S. military and the leverage that affords him. He's going to use that, but he would, unlike his predecessors, mainly the CIA, he would prefer to just use that as a bargaining chip. Let's say, but at the same time, not make it a kind of do what I say or else type thing, up to and including starting a conflict. It's simply you want to have it there as a fact on the ground, but engage in reasonable diplomacy with your peer competitors, which is a more sensible way to do it. So MAGA's okay. MAGA's going to make it.
But here, Yemen, look, the Yemen's been bombed off and on since 2011.
Mm-hmm.
Since the Houthis did their Protect Gaza Shield thing, no one stopped them. I think I read that the Red Sea is still effectively closed to American, British, French, Israeli cargo.
I don't think so. I think it was they backed off on it. They said they would start it again. They're threatening recently because the Israelis decided to stop aid coming into Gaza, and the Houthis threatened or said that they would begin to blockade or attack ships in the Red Sea again because of that. But I think, it's not something they can do.
The Houthis aren't going to be undefeated with missile strikes.
No.
We agree. I mean, Trump would have to. It's funny, when Trump started his first term, the very first thing, military engagement, was his approval of an operation into Yemen proper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember getting a clear read on that, but it ended up with like 1 or 2 US Ospreys crashing, men being killed, and then sort of no one talking about what really happened. And most likely it's because they engaged with Houthis and came off the worse for wear, and there was no more incursion into Yemen since then, it's all been lobbing all of Biden years airstrikes with the UK, and it didn't seem to stop the Houthis. Certainly hasn't toppled the regime, which isn't the regime because it's a counter-revolution. It's popular. You can't unseat them by air. So this is like messaging to Iran. This is signaling to Israel, we got your back, but it's not actually going to deal with the issue.
No. Here you can see how it's going. There's Africa. Yeah, there you go. There's the Red Sea on the right.
Okay. Business as usual.
Quite a bit of shippiness going on there. Quite a bit of shippiness going on everywhere, really.
Quite a lot. Look at the other Gulf, Persian Gulf, Mediterranean, of course. But yeah, it's amazing how in all this like years now, we've had years of any day now. It could be World War III. If America attacks Iran, but to this day, it's the spice must flow. It's 100%. Full steam ahead. Shipping lanes are capacity, and
because I mean, the thing is, people
all that rhetoric, and the reality is so different. Well, it's still holding. It's stable in the basics.
If anything significant happened to a global shipping routes or routes like important, like as in the Red Sea or the Malacca Straits, whatever. If anything significant happened for any length of time, you know about it. You wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to check the map. You just go and check your local supermarket, or check your local paper, I suppose, or your local newspaper, or the internet. You'd find out in the internet pretty quickly. But in terms of whether or not it's affecting you, go and check your local supermarket or your local gas station. See if you can get any. You'd be like, why is there no gas in the gas station? Why is there no food in the supermarkets? Hang on, let me check the vessel finder website. Oh shit, there's no vessels going through the Red Sea. That's got anything to do with it.
Look, honey, that's where my package is.
Yeah, look, it's around the fucking Horn of Africa,
the Arabian Sea.
Yeah, it's somewhere near the Antarctic.
That email makes sense now. It says possible 9-month delay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So what? Yeah, you seem to be saying that after all, there is some kind of chess going on in Trump's head.
It's not even his chess. It's not even chess.
3D chess.
It's just Trump's way of going about reshaping America. Let's say reshaping America's role in the world. Let's say on a more business-like and efficient business-like model. It's very, like we said before, it's very expensive to maintain, has been very expensive to maintain an empire. You find that out through Doge and all that kind of stuff, and the USAID, all that kind of stuff. But it's very expensive to service your vassals, let's say, in the interest of maintaining empire. And Trump looks at that and says, this is ridiculous. We've got $35 trillion debt. We're cutting that back to the greatest extent possible, but we're still going to use the military might and prowess and influence and bases, etc., that we have. No point in giving those up. Like if somebody made you inherited an empire, right? And you want to remake it. You want to pull back, let's say, from the overt imperial machinations and outreach, where it costs a lot of money, but you're going to maintain the structures in place so that you can switch over to a more business-like model and use the structures of empire that are useful for that endeavor, but remove all others. I.e. the ones specifically, and you've seen that, like I said, with USAID and stuff, the ones that were designed to basically influence
nation building, where your influence in the country just perpetually grows until everyone in that country is a homogenous reflection of
that's your
own country.
It's the difference between practical business-like empire and ideological empire. The people beforehand, the neoliberal types, going back to the neocons and before them, they're interested in empire, or they're interested in expanding and growing and maintaining. The American empire was ideological. It was empire for empire's sake, because it's more power for me. I get to feel more powerful because I have more influence over people, just for the sake of it, basically. Not because I believe necessarily that, the way, not necessarily that they believe that the American ideas or American philosophy, the American way of life, let's say, is the best one, and therefore everybody. You've had that narrative, right? Of like, we're trying to spread freedom and democracy. We're trying to bring up all the poor peoples and impoverished peoples around the world. The people are, languishing under the rule of dictators and all that kind of stuff. We're really, it's hard. It's like heartfelt, desire to spread freedom. That was a bullshit narrative to get people to go along with it. But it wasn't beyond that. It wasn't even that they necessarily think that, that there is an actual ideology, an American ideology that they really value, and they don't care whether or not it's good for other people. They think it's what they feel. It's kind of like, everybody should think the way I think. I want everybody to look like me. Well, we can't do that. Maybe with genetic engineering, maybe with some special mRNA vaccines, we can turn everybody into a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. But want everybody to think like me, because it gives me a buzz, gives me a thrill. I just feel better when everybody thinks like me. And it's also just dominance and control, because if everybody thinks like you, then they do what you want, and they, it's like, I don't know, it's pathological, basically.
It is.
It's a pathological mindset.
Like that colonel in the Vietnam War, inside every gook is an American just waiting to jump out.
Exactly, yeah. It's just a disgust and a loathing of the other, and of
their difference,
of diversity.
Yes, ironically.
Ironically, the thing that they use to try and, that they claim that they value, it's not actually, because obviously actual diversity is differences, inherent differences, and the native differences, natural differences within each culture and people, and that should be maintained that way. So if you want diversity, you should have nationalism and populism, conservatism in every country to maintain the diverse nature relative to other countries. But their idea of diversity is that to mix everything up. Like, it's take all the peoples of the world, put them into a big pot, mix it all up, so they all blend together, and then pour it back out into all the countries,
into the same mold,
into the same countries.
Yeah,
and then they've got diversity, but you have homogeneity. You have no diversity. You have a lack of diversity. You have a monoculture. So, and that's, of course, they want to do that because that serves their desire to control people as much as possible. If everybody thinks alike and acts alike, then they're much more easily controlled. So Trump is giving up on that, I think. So MAGA's going to make it, Adam. Don't worry. Huh?
Anders in the comments asked Grok, and Grok apparently says the Suez Channel is down about half in traffic.
Yeah, for sure. Certain ships have decided, just out of precaution,
to avoid it.
To avoid it. But still, it hasn't been blockaded in that sense.
Yes.
And even if it was blockaded, I don't think it's the place that you have to worry about being blockaded is not the Suez Canal, but the Straits of Hormuz
or Malacca.
The Malacca Straits for sure, but more of a more immediate concern, let's say, would be the Straits of Hormuz, because then it's not that any given area of the world would be blockaded for goods and stuff, because there's always an alternative route around, and then you just have a delay. But if you have an actual effective blockade of the Straits of Hormuz, for example, then you have a significant impact directly on oil and gas prices
and everything else,
and then everything else. Yeah, economic problems. Then, so yeah.
Okay, we can come back to Israel, Middle East, Yemen, but I think the thing all week long has been the back and forth over peace and war in Ukraine. It's pretty well. I'll just cut through it because it's gone back and forth, and there's been like, one moment it looks good and the next moment it looks bad. But let's go back to like 3 weeks ago when you said after the first talks, especially when Lavrov and Rubio met in Saudi Arabia, that there might be some ripples between here and then, but that's it. It's pretty much the reason they're talking is because the basics, the fundamentals are already worked out. It just has to play out now. Do you stick by that? You think that it's still currently likely that Ukraine is about to be settled, and with it, US and Russia stop proxy warring?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
For sure.
Well, can we then go through the ups and downs of the week? Because some of them make you go, well, I'm not so sure. So, Intel and military aid, Intel sharing military aid resumed after 4 daws of it being cut. And then I actually heard from someone saying, you know what, I'm not sure we ever really stopped it. So,
no.
The reality is probably it didn't, but that was put out there to...
Well, there'll always be a lag, like, you know what I mean?
Of course, it takes time.
I mean, military aid, like, I mean, there's military aid in the country that's been stockpiled and all that kind of stuff.
Well, the Polish PM did say that there's movements have stopped across our border into Western Ukraine.
Yeah, but I mean, there's stockpiles in Ukraine, like, you know what I mean? It's not going to have any direct impact, let's say, on a short term.
Yeah.
It's not going to have any direct impact. And even lack of intelligence sharing, minimal impact, especially if only for a short period of time, you know what I mean?
Well, I would have thought that includes real-time targeting and tracking for drones coming from Ukraine. So the day after that, the largest mass swarm drone attack yet from Ukraine on Russia happened on Wednesday, I think.
Yeah.
The Russians say they downed 337 of them. So at least a dozen hit apartment buildings in Moscow. 4 or 5 people killed. So that's like hundreds more were fired.
Yeah. That's Ukraine.
That's Ukraine. And does that happen? We've assumed during the war that happened with real-time CIA, MI6 support. Can Ukraine do that autonomously?
Yeah. They're producing the Ukraine. One thing that's come out of this is Ukraine. If there's nothing else to say about Ukraine, I mean, at this point, in terms of its future economic viability in the country itself and all that kind of stuff, it could at the very least turn into the global center for drone manufacturing, for military drone manufacturing, like as in, because that's what they've been focusing on. That's the one thing
they've had to learn.
Well, that's all they could do, like, because Russia's been taking out the big larger scale manufacturing plants in Ukraine. It's long before now. Most of them have been destroyed. Tanks and airplanes and missiles and all that kind of stuff. They don't have that capability. It has to be shipped in from elsewhere. But the one thing that they can do, obviously, is they can get shipped in drones from anywhere. And we're talking about just commercial drones here, and then in their basements, again, retrofitting them, putting small explosive charges on them, and then all the
seafaring drones were novel, apparently.
Right. Yeah, they've been developing all that kind of stuff along with Western advisors and all that kind of stuff, because they're taking part in it, because they're interested, like the Brits and the Americans and stuff would be interested in developing drone technology. And the whole Ukraine war was a perfect opportunity to develop that. But in terms of those, fairly basic drone attacks on Moscow or on anywhere in Russia from Ukraine, the Ukrainians can do that themselves, and all they need is just GPS coordinates. Like, they only need Google Maps, an off-the-shelf drone, and some fireworks.
The ones that did hit in Moscow, they weren't hitting strategic targets. From what I saw, they were just like random apartment buildings and things. So it's not like you really needed high-tech surveillance for that one. You would just need like Google Maps and away you go.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Now that happened Wednesday. That's the day an agreement is reached. I don't know if Zelensky himself went, but whatever. Kiev and the US officials in Riyadh agreed on this 30-day ceasefire proposal. And that's when there was a kind of pan-West media blitz. The ball is now in Putin's court, and Trump himself bigged it up. Yeah, cool. And he seemed to be saying, well, I know who wants peace now, and it's Ukraine, because they've agreed to this 30-day ceasefire. So, well, if Russia doesn't, we'll see who wants. I was like, that's quite a turnaround, because it sounds like
Trump didn't actually say that. It was Starmer and the rest of them saying that the ball is in your court. That was put out by the Europeans because they all jumped on board with that because they liked the idea of a 30-day ceasefire.
And they particularly like the 30-day ceasefire at this particular moment in time when the Russians just cut off how many Ukrainian troops in Kursk?
Well, yeah, so the next day Putin's in Minsk, of all places, which is interesting, with Lukashenko, and he gives his response, his formal response, which he reads out. It's like a short page document. And he surprises me because he says, it's a good idea. We agree with Trump's proposal.
An intent.
But then points out that the timing's interesting. Because we currently have thousands, tens of thousands, he didn't give a figure, but a lot of Ukrainian soldiers are encircled in Kursk. And then he concluded by saying, well, asking a series of questions. Well, what should happen now? Because normally in this situation, you tell your troops to surrender, or at least put down the weapons. But is the ceasefire enabling them to just leave? With their weapons? Do we just stop?
Yeah, well, that's what Putin said, yeah. He said these are people who have killed civilians. They're basically terrorists. And what do we do? They just get a free pass? And then Putin's counter was, okay, we can. He didn't agree to the 30-day ceasefire necessarily, but he said that in the case of the Americans, Trump's request that they be allowed to, you'd be shown mercy or whatever it is. Putin said
he leaves Minsk and he flies in. Trump's envoy and friend Steve Witkoff is waiting for him in Moscow. We now know they had a 3 to 4 hour meeting. After which, we've already mentioned that Trump posts on Truth Social that he asked that the thousands of trapped Ukrainians in Kursk be spared. And Putin, we heard, was basically sure if they surrender. And so we await an order from Kiev for them to do so.
Right. I.e.
Zelensky's response is, what encirclement?
It's not happening.
And the Western media is backing him up and saying, no, we fact-checked this claim from Putin. We have a study here from the Institute for the Study of War, and nope, our satellite data shows there's no Ukrainian encirclement. It's like, seriously, are you going to keep pretending? So Starmer and Macron then said, Moscow must accept this 30-day ceasefire. And Putin, what he said in Minsk is just more delaying statements. So now, since then, yesterday, the Kremlin responded that warning that time is running out for those Ukrainians in Kursk. Like, what's it going to be, guys? This can't go on forever. Today, the foreign minister of Ukraine, Andrei Sybiga, states Ukraine's forces in Russia's Kursk region will continue their operations. My read on this, it looks like this is shaping up to be like a deliberate sacrifice of those Yukis so that the empire can say, see, Putin doesn't want peace.
A deliberate sacrifice? Well, I mean, Putin, the Russians are finally getting wise to that kind of manipulation and, attempt to bait you and draw you into a situation where you can be accused of doing something that you didn't necessarily do, blah, blah, blah. Because he said that obviously a lot of these guys are actual terrorists and they shouldn't be allowed to go free. They have to pay for their crimes. So we will not kill them because we could. We'll spare their lives, but they all need to surrender.
Yeah, and we await an order from Kiev, and Kiev goes, "No, they're going to keep fighting."
But then that's his choice. That's nothing to do with Putin. Like, you can't accuse Putin of anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean they won't accuse him, but
they will. Yeah.
But obviously, anybody who's watching will realize that. But it's just so silly at this point. You know what I mean? Like the nonsense. The media was putting out there recently that Witkoff was left waiting for 8 hours into meeting with Trump, you know what I mean? Or meeting with Putin. Putin kept him waiting for 8 hours. That's the lefty media kind of trying to just, sow division, basically. You know what I mean? Because they're on this whole Trump's a Trump's a Putin ally, and therefore
Putin.
Let's do what we can. That isn't working. Let's say calling Trump a Putin lackey isn't really gaining any traction anymore. So what can we do? Well, let's try and sow division between the Trump and the Russians, because it's like we still believe that Trump is. I mean, it's kind of true in a certain sense. The way to characterize it is false, like calling Trump a KGB agent, basically, that he's been working for the KGB for years. Obviously, that's historical bullshit. But of course, Trump is
trying to cooperate,
aligning with or cooperating with the Russians. So they do their best to try and sour that relationship, and with pathetic attempts like putting out a false story that he was kept waiting for 8 hours. Because then, oh my God, how could Trump possibly like Putin when Putin keeps Trump's envoy waiting for 8 hours? It's like, well, he didn't. So can we move on now?
Never happened.
Are you done?
Trump called it out as fake news. Steve came back from Moscow and said that's bullshit. I've got to say, despite all the ups and downs, it seems like the information war is trying to make you doubt that it could. But they're obviously they're going to be trying to sabotage it for real and make you doubt that it's at all feasible. But the statements still in Moscow and Washington are good, despite things like that intelligence sharing having been halted for now. And Lavrov and Rubio had a call today, in fact, Sunday. They didn't say what about, but they just said to discuss next steps.
But I think it'll happen pretty quickly, and it's pretty clear. You can just go back to basics, forget about all the details that happen. It's obvious that Trump has made it pretty clear that he wants to end the conflict in Ukraine. He's pushing towards that, and he has the capability to do that, but he just has to be careful about how he does that, about how he goes about it, because he doesn't want to screw himself over. He obviously still wants to, engage with Russia. Russia is still a competitor, so he has to engage with them on that basis, but he's not engaging with them on the same basis as the previous administrations or the CIA, etc.
And he wants
the deep state were before. He's engaging with them on a more respectful basis, but he's still going to use whatever leverage he has. But the bottom line is he's going to end the war in Ukraine. He's going to, and he could, like I said, just like stop all the shipments and intelligence sharing definitively with Ukraine if he wanted to end it tomorrow. But he doesn't want to do that because he wants to see how much he can get out of the Russians, basically. Zelensky doesn't have all the cards, and Trump doesn't have all the cards. And Zelensky has no cards, and Trump doesn't have many cards either in this situation. That's one thing he didn't say in that the White House meeting. He said, look, Zelensky, you don't have the cards right now. And to be honest, neither do fucking I. But so none of us have the cards here. Russia has the cards, so just suck it up. Everybody would have shit their pants. There would have been fucking heart attacks.
That's what I was going to say. Trump, it's different. It's very difficult because he also needs to salvage a win for the West.
At least the appearance of one.
Even if he hates the West, the NATO, the Empire, he has to salvage a win.
Well, not even a win.
They're going to be on his back about it non-stop.
Well, he doesn't care about that, but not even a win. But at least, I mean, it's not even. I don't even think he cares about the optics. He cares because he knows that the media is just full of shit all the time, and he doesn't pander to that. He doesn't care about the optics, except to the extent that they actually relate to or have an impact on practical reality. You know what I mean? Like sometimes using propaganda can have a tangible real world effect, but he's more interested in getting out of it what he can get out of it. So he's a realist. Is what can we get out of this, and what can I do to get as much out of this as possible? But at the end of the day, the bottom line is that he wants to end the conflict, but he wants to end it on as favorable terms for himself, for America, as possible. But he's going to. I think he'll have to commit to it. Like eventually, he'll have to commit to it. He's driving towards something else, and it's not Ukraine. He wants that over and done with, and to be out of there, gone. He wants to leave, basically, and he wants to do it as soon as possible. And he's just navigating that. He realizes he can't just turn around and walk away, but he's trying to do it as quickly as possible.
Agreed. So here's a small development that's pertinent to this. Doge has apparently cut funding to a U.S. academic research unit or NGO coming out of Yale University. Headline in RT: U.S. shuts down probe into alleged Russian quote kidnapping of Ukrainian children. You might remember this. The body in question was the Humanitarian Research Lab, HRL, at Yale University. Apparently, it was their work that formed the basis of the ICC arrest warrant for Putin for crimes against humanity, because he was, quote, he had abducted at that point, or ordered the, quote, abductions of 6,000 children from eastern Ukraine. And the Russians were like, no, they're kids in the Donbass region who are either orphaned already or they're in a hot zone. We're bringing them to Russia. And here, look, there's footage of them coming and the schools they go to and everything. But that was parlayed into an ICC arrest warrant. And that had real world effects, because you remember that Putin said he would, then he didn't go to a BRICS or G20 meeting in South Africa. South Africa's friendly, but they're party to the ICC, and they would have been like, well, maybe you shouldn't come, because they were trying to build a case against Israel, Netanyahu and Gallant. So they would have been caught between, the hypocrisy of us. So Putin didn't go in the end because of that thing. Well, that's now been cut. So that whole thing is bullshit, because you cut the money to an operation that's basically PR.
Yeah.
Here we are, we're identifying and tracking these kids and where they're going. Okay, they're real kids and they're going places, but not for the reasons you're saying.
Yeah. That's been around for, how long has that been? Maybe a year and a half, 18 months, 2 years, like they've been talking about that. And it really the reason they've been pushing that is because it's one of those propaganda ploys, propaganda messaging that really seems to take hold, in the average.
The kids.
It's the kids, for the children.
For the children.
Do it for the children. For the rest of the Ukrainian children that have been stolen by Putin. He's got them all in his house. 6,000.
I was thinking, yeah. He's got them all in the torture dungeon.
He's got them all in a shack out the back. So, because I know someone who is your average person who doesn't really pay much attention except to what the media tells them, and I was talking to him about general world events the other day, and that's one thing he actually brought up about Putin. Yeah, but he kidnapped a lot of those kids, like.
Who said that? Sorry,
a person I know. Who's just an average media listener,
Yeah,
and that was one
Joe.
of the average. Yeah, was, and that stuck,
Yeah.
And it's funny because people don't actually ask, like, well, what? I mean, it's like if I was one of those people, I suppose it's a problem, because if I was one of those people, I probably wouldn't be asking. But so I can't really put myself as I am now in the mindset of one of those people. But it's still bizarre to me that someone would come across that piece of information about Putin kidnapped 6,000 Ukrainian children during the course of the war, and then go, that's really bad. I should protest this. But first thing I'd go is like, well, why do you do that?
Who were they? What and why?
Who were, why, and what? What was it for? Was it like to indoctrinate them into to mind program?
You wouldn't even have to do it as like a debunking thing, is like questioning what they're saying. It could just be like, the people that was looking into like the Brigitte Macron thing is like, oh my god, this is terrible. Let me find out more information about it so I can be even more upset about it.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you can be even more upset about it, but they don't even want to be more upset about it. Yeah. That's upsetting enough. Yeah. But I mean, I would thinking. I mean, just I assume that the average person, if they heard that piece of information, not even to debunk it, it wouldn't be bunking. Is it the opposite of debunking? Bunking? Pro-bunking? Debunking? Rebunking? I wouldn't. It's not one or the other. I would just have questions. Yeah. I wouldn't be satisfied with just that piece of information. It's pregnant with a bunch of other questions that I can't just ignore. I mean, it's not enough information.
I think if you're a passive absorber of media information, you've had so much titrated into your head about Putin over the decades to this point that all they need to say to you is, 6,000 children went missing, and Putin ordered that. Oh, I can only imagine. Don't tell me anymore what he did with them or what happened to them. It's kind of left. Oh, because that shit happens in this world.
You may as well say. To me, you may as well say that Putin abducted 6,000 giraffes from Ukraine, I would immediately go, what? Really? What did you do that for? Where do you get those from? Where are they going? What does he want with 6,000 giraffes? I would have in the same way I'd have for children. I mean, I have the same response when I hear that he abducted 6,000 children. I'd be like, what? Really? What do you want them for? What would you abduct 6,000 Ukrainian children for? Isn't there enough people does he need more people in Russia?
Yeah.
What is it like?
Yeah.
I mean, whatever. Shitheads.
This tweet from Dmitry Medvedev was gold. I think you saw it, Joe, but
yeah.
I think he's responding to the Brits, to Starmer.
He has a
Moscow must accept.
He has a new position in the Russian government, and it's that he's the head of the Department of Shitposting. They've created the Department of Shitposting in the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs or of International. I don't know. Because
he's the czar.
But he obviously has license to do that, and I can't imagine he's just sitting at home doing that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, he's obviously doing it as is that his go back? Is that his? Does he have? Because a lot of them have private accounts and then their official. Like he's the head of the Security Council, right?
Yeah.
So does he have a different Twitter account that's Dmitry Medvedev as head of the Security Council? Because a lot of American politicians have their private account, and they'll say stuff on there that is also political, or whatever, but they'll make only official statements on their official Secretary of State, for example.
Yeah.
Well, in his bio, he has his official titles. So
yeah.
That's him. But the beauty of it is that he does the shit posts. UK updates Trump. Russia should accept the proposal for a ceasefire without any conditions, says the British Foreign Secretary. Britain and its minister can shove their idea back up the shithole it came from, diplomatically speaking. Yeah. It's the diplomatically speaking that makes it officially okay, you see.
Yeah.
This is the kind of populist rhetoric that appeals to populists and the populations everywhere, and you don't get much of it in Europe.
One more related thing, I won't go on about it because it's kind of an arcane topic, but before you play it, Damien, we're going to read a Sky News, and it was actually shared widely on only on British outlets. They themselves seemed almost proud of it and reported it widely. I didn't find anything in Russian on it, or on Russian English language news. What they're going to read is a statement that came from the SVR. The SVR, I think, is sort of the modern KGB, so Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, not as opposed to the FSB. I'm pretty sure it's not made up. It actually came from the SVR. The Russians, so the Medvedevs and others didn't cite it. Maybe Russian media did, but have a listen. I can't believe they published it.
Well, in the last few minutes, there's been a further statement from Russian authorities accusing Britain of being the main instigator of the global conflict. In a statement, a Kremlin spokesman said that the British leadership sees a threat to its interests in the promotion of dialogue between the United States and Russia on resolving the Ukrainian conflict. London fears that this will lead to the failure of the British strategy of containing Moscow. As we can see, London today, just as it did on the eve of both world wars of the last century, acts as the main instigator of the global conflict. At the same time, the British themselves obviously are again counting on sitting it out on their island. The statement from Moscow goes on to say, it is time to expose them and send a clear signal to the treacherous Albion and its elites. You will not succeed.
Yeah.
Damn.
And what does Sky News do with a bombshell of truth like that? You know what I mean? When they have to read it out, usually they would just ignore that, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But like when you have that all laid out and it's actually very, very accurate and very true, and it's been broadcast to the British people.
And no one else, I think.
No, yeah. Yeah.
Bizarre. The Times, BBC,
yeah,
maybe.
well, they would stay away from that kind of stuff because that's Russian propaganda, but it's actually true, right?
They seemed, my impression was, RT didn't have a Sputnik, English didn't have it. My impression was the British boastfully or joyfully reported it because they found it so ludicrous that this would score as propaganda for them about how crazy Russia is.
But
But
it's a big dose of truth.
Super accurate. I mean, it's Darryl Cooper's whole thing about Churchill being the bigger of the two villains in World War II, or an important co-villain in how and why Hitler went apeshit.
Yeah. Talking about propaganda, this is very short, but I just wanted to post it, and I just want to let you watch it. And just play that. Oh, listen, have a look at this.
This a faggot's world. It's a faggot's world. But it would be nothing.
Oh, they're so cute.
Nothing. Without a boom
Say the lean in.
But more than the audio over the top of that, the important thing, obviously, that audio wasn't played with that officially, but that display of affection there is completely false. Neither of those men actually like each other at all. Like Macron standing there and holding his hands and smiling and hugging. Neither of them actually like each other. They're not friends at all. And Macron's is probably the best example of that kind of bullshit because he's gay himself.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the gay mannerisms and stuff, so he puts it on a little bit. But a lot of other European politicians and American kind of deep state politicians do the same thing with Zelensky. And none of them give a shit about him. And he doesn't give a shit about them. They're not friends. And they will never talk to each other again after all this bullshit is done. This is all entirely for public opinion. Those public love-ins are all just absolutely 100% to try and convince the population to feel that way about Zelensky. Like the way the kind of supposed feelings that are being displayed by Macron to Zelensky there, by hugging him and kissing him, standing back and looking, stand back, let me look at you. You've grown so much. Look I remember you as a little nipper.
Oh,
it's like, it's almost like, this is my long lost brother or my, my favorite nephew or my whatever.
What you're saying is it's fake and gay.
You can leave out the gay. I mean, it's gay by definition because Macron's in it, but it's entirely fabricated, and it's designed to get the average members of the population to feel that way about Zelensky, and therefore just shut up and suck it up, and even support 800
like I do,
800
like
billion,
I appear to
$800 billion of their taxpayer money going to not Ukraine.
European defense
but to European quote-unquote defense contractors, which ultimately keeps the politicians in the style that they're used to.
Yeah.
It's just...
For the record, we love our gay friends. We don't like gay cycles.
Yeah. It's one of the psychos.
And gay narcissists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have it, but in that vein, there was a great answer from Rubio when he was back home from a reporter. So, Mr. Rubio, are you saying you trust Putin? And he gave a great little talk because when he decided to use it to speak for a few minutes and say, no, look, it was like de Gaulle. There are no friends. States have interests. We need to go back to our old understanding. This is how diplomacy has always worked. There are states. Can be aligned just 10% with Russia, and if we are good, let's work something through that 10%. Mm-hmm. With our allies, it may only be 90%. He was trying to get people used to the idea that no, it's not here in the West. We all hug each other and say, "Oh, you've grown so much since our last meeting." That whole thing of the last 20 years, where Trudeau turns up in his gay socks and shows off with the gay socks of the other guy, and they go, "Oh, yours are so funny. Oh, yours are better. Oh my god, that shit is over. That's done." They're going back to rational, calm, sober states relationships,
right? Which ultimately is nationalism. Where each country, they have diplomatic relations with other countries, and they can they're friendly from a diplomatic point of view, and some of them might like each other more than others or whatever, but at the end of the day, each politician works in the interest of their population, and they have friends at home, for the most part, at least from a political and diplomatic point of view. Their allies and their friends and their interests are in their own countries.
I guess you could say it's transitioning from the Marvel world where everyone's either good or evil.
Yeah.
It's black and it's white, and going from that childish view, that children's view of you're bad or you're good.
Rubio said something like that.
To the more nuanced, like, people are complicated. Relationships are complicated. They're messy.
Yeah.
And you just have to be able to live with the ambiguity of not having an evil person or a good person.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's a shift in American policy, foreign policy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Beforehand, it was, we're the good guys, and anybody who we say is the bad guys are the bad guys, right? There's goodies and baddies, and that's it,
Yeah. And it's so pervasive that when MAGA came along, the more mature people who realized we needed to get Trump back in to stabilize things said it's the Avengers team, because they had this reference for...
Yeah. But it's...
Well, Rubio said, no, we need to grow up from that.
Yeah, well, and it's not... it's obviously Trump's... It's hard to know whether it's that Trump... I don't think Rubio was a career politician, and he was not on board with this. He was on board with the deep state imperial hegemony, neoliberal agenda, for a long time before now. But so, there's an argument there that he's been a bit cynical about this whole thing, that he's changing his stripes just because he's got to be Secretary of State. But it's hard to know whether Trump is doing this from an ideological perspective, like in a sense of like he's a good person who sees that America has not played the role that it should have been playing. It's played a bad role. They've been the bad guys, let's say, to some extent, for a lot of recent history, or whether or not this whole change of tune is being forced on America, because you have to start talking about the nuances, and things are complicated.
Multipolarity.
And we have to like make accommodations for other countries and stuff. Well, why do you have to do that? You didn't do that before. Why do you have to do it now? Are you only doing it? Are you doing it because it's the right thing to do, or are you doing it because you have to do it because you have no fucking other choice?
I think it's the latter. A bit of both. The latter teaches humility, reality, right?
Yeah.
And encourages realizations in quick succession, such that Rubio ends up using the M word. So it's both.
Yeah. Generally speaking, it's coming at an interesting time in history, because it's coming at a time in history when, well, it may be that it's coming at a time in history where there are, the world is changing and may change quite dramatically in the near future, in a not so positive way, in a general sense, and that countries are either doing it naturally or being forced, or by some natural force or natural order, are moving towards, well, isolationism. Let's say it's called Trump's accused of being isolationist. We've talked about isolationism long before now. In fact, I think we started talking about isolationism, that Trump would be isolationist before he was even president, which is, it's a loaded word, but I think it's appropriate. And in doing that, he's forcing other countries to look after their own interests as well, to become more isolationist. And that's the kind of thing that would be most appropriate in advance of some kind of a global kind of breakdown, or maybe economic foobar,
environmental,
or something going pretty going pear-shaped globally, let's say, because that's the way you would be best prepared to protect yourself. Because
increased flexibility, independence.
Yeah, exactly. It might sound like dog eat dog, every man for himself. It doesn't have to be that way necessarily, but that's a better position to be in, where you're focused on your own national and population's interests, rather than just immersed or meshed in this globalist order where, you know, one group or whatever controls everything. I mean, other countries then are much more exposed when they're dependent. It's basically the difference between being a slave and being a freeman, where you have a significant level of independence over your own, you know, your own actions, your own future, your own decisions, and that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, when the plantation owner, if the plantation caught on fire, the plantation owner would get his family and get them the hell out of there, and all the slaves would just be left chained up in the fields, right? And it all burned, right? There'll be no. I'm just saying, your countries would be in a much worse position to be dependent or to be in vassal status if the shit was hit the fan, compared to if they had at least developed some level of national interest, developed their own national interests, and become somewhat independent.
You see this in Hungary very well. They want nuclear power for independence from both West and East.
Yeah.
Now Russia will help them with developing the nuclear power, and you need Western capital and Russian energy to help get it started. But Moscow understands that that's the end goal. So Moscow hasn't. Long term, they lose because they know Hungary will need less gas and oil from us. But they want long term. They want the little countries of Eastern Europe to not be dependent. It's also in their interests, you know.
Yeah. So we'll have to see how it plays out. But I think in that sense, that progression, of that change in that direction towards more nationalism, more populism and stuff is positive. Not from an ideological perspective, but from the perspective of
the most practical perspective.
But and to protect yourself from potential global crises,
turmoil. Yeah. Yes, the famous turmoil. Maybe we're getting few sniffs of it. The U.S. stock market down 10% from its high.
Well, that's what we said. Like we said before, Trump. My prediction was that Trump was going to fuck everything up. Do you remember that? Like he was going to screw the pooch.
And gold hit 3,000.
Yeah,
an ounce.
Well, it just kept going. But I mean, Trump is going to. I think I said that he would end up being seen as the one who screwed the pooch globally, caused maybe some economic collapse or economic downturn or whatever. But it wouldn't be actually his fault, if you know what I mean. I mean,
they're going to paint it as his fault.
Yeah, but it'll be pointed. Yeah, exactly. It'll be painted as his fault. Yeah, yeah, it's just. But that doesn't mean. I mean, because I think he's going ahead with the tariffs business because it makes sense. I mean, in an unmanipulated, all other things being equal, current global economic system, it makes sense there's room to transition to the kind of new economic model, let's say, that Trump is trying to initiate. But I don't necessarily think that all other things are equal, and there probably will be people in secret back rooms somewhere
in the city of London
or wherever, or in the deep state or whatever, who have the option to
deliberately
cause
trouble,
provoke crises,
or capitalize. No pun intended.
Cyber attacks. There's a lot of talk about recently. Again, it's not new, but they're talking about Russia and cyber attacks shutting down the payment systems and all that kind of stuff, and how terrible it would be if the kind of the credit card system or the credit payment systems were subjected to a cyber attack. It would just, everything would grind to a halt. So there's many different ways society can grind to a halt. People think, well, food shortages or blockading of shipping routes or something and that kind of stuff. But there's lots of other ways that stuff,
financial and information
ways that things can be upended. So that's for me, that when I see that kind of thing, I think about individuals behind computers or with access, like we've talked about this before, about backdoors with Israeli or CIA backdoors to like hospital. You remember that?
Yes.
To
Snowden, NSA leaks, that was CIA.
right,
But
well,
no doubt there's
right,
mutual access.
yeah,
Yeah, but the potential, I think the example, Snowden had an exercise that he leaked. This is 2012, huh?
mm-hmm.
Where they could make the hospitals in Japan go dark
right,
if Japan didn't play ball or
right,
something.
exactly. So there's that
And blame China.
right, exactly. So that capability for people to do that and blame whoever they want, you know. And when I see it in the mainstream media, people, you know, media hacks talking about that, putting that out there, that Putin could, you know, Putin's cyber army could attack the UK, you know, information infrastructure and cause chaos and all that kind of stuff. Well, I'm like, yeah, he could, but he probably won't, but someone else can as well, and blame it on Putin, you know.
Macron explicitly accused Russia last week.
Right.
It's been rumored in French media. Well, our reports suggest it may have come from Russia. This is a series of attacks on specific hospitals in France going back 3 or 4 years.
And
Macron just blurted out that Russia is behind it, as if everyone knows that, with no evidence at all.
And the fact that that's been put out there by politicians, by Macron and others, and put out there in the media, it leaves a trail, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Going back quite a number of years, that then filters up or filters down into the public consciousness, so that if and when something like that does happen, well, let's look, who do we have on record as somebody at least saying would do this? Russia. Yeah. See, people have said in the past that Russia does this kind of thing, and this kind of thing just happened. All right, Russia did it.
Speaking of cyber attacks, there was one on X, against X on Monday. And Musk announced that while fending it off, they figured it came from Ukraine.
Well, he said the IPs pointed to Ukraine, but that's another one of those things where it's like an IP is not that difficult to spoof. So it's like, who knows where it came from, because it could have come from literally anywhere.
Down the road in Langley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because there's certain different levels there. One is to try and, you know, send a warning to Musk and to X and show a capability to take down X, to threaten Musk, but also to then blame it on Ukraine. And if it was, say, like the CIA, why would they blame it on Ukraine? Because that would, if you wanted to, right now, like, you know, there's been complaints and all, they're attacking Trump and stuff for being mean to Zelensky, and they would want America to be more favorable to Ukraine. So why would someone try to sour the relationship between, why would someone in the deep state in the US, Washington establishment, try and sour the relationship between America or Trump and, by implication, Trump and Ukraine? You know,
that's why I like the more. I could just go with the surface explanation,
Russia,
that it is Ukraine.
Yeah,
because at the time there was a question over Starlink, because the Ukrainians were up in arms over the claim that Musk would cut Starlink. But then Musk said, "No, I never even suggested that. No one did."
Rubio said something along the same lines as well, where because I can't remember where I remember looking into it, and it wasn't really that. Maybe it was Musk who had said something along the lines of, you know, if I pulled Starlink from Ukraine, the front lines would fall within a week. That was what he said.
Yeah.
And he just like threw it out there as like a thing that's like, you know, factual reality. And so everybody was just responding to it like, oh my God, he's going to pull, you know, the Starlink support. And
because he's with Trump 100% on ending the war.
Yeah. And, you know, that caused like, you know, Rubio to come out with a statement saying like, that's never been like put on the table as something that we've actually discussed. And that maybe Musk said something to a similar effect. later on. It was just like, because it got floated
Mm-hmm.
and not even in a real serious way. It just, it's a fact of reality that if he did pull it, that it would all collapse.
Is that true? That would be interesting to know, because that means literally with the flick of a switch,
Yeah.
I mean, the US could end this.
Yeah. No, 'cause
unilaterally.
he tried towards the beginning of the conflict. He tried, and they wouldn't let him back out of the deal
Are you
because he was.
Are you sure? I know that he suspended starting access in a specific operation in
he did,
Crimea
Yeah,
because it was going to target the Russian fleet
right.
in Sebastopol.
It was for defense. He always said it was for defense, not for offense against Russia.
Yeah.
But no, he's been fairly supportive about that, for supportive of Ukraine, and in general sense. I mean, at the beginning, and he was supportive of it, but like I think he said on Twitter at some point, your attitudes can change, and at a certain point,
Yes.
after 3 years of a war, it needs to stop. So he's allowed to change his opinion about Ukraine when he was more critical of Ukraine and Zelensky, etc. But I mean, Musk maintaining Starlink, obviously Musk is more or less part of the government now, and therefore Starlink is part of the US military's aid to Ukraine, has been, I suppose, since he started doing it. But that keeping that going, keeping all those things are going, you're going to keep all that going till the last minute. While you're negotiating with Russia
Mhm.
on some kind of a settlement, and you're trying to get the best out of it as possible, you're going to keep all that stuff in
Yeah.
place until you have the negotiations. And the negotiations all, they reach their logical conclusion, and you reach some kind of a settlement where everybody's willing to compromise or is happy with it or whatever.
Then you put the weapons down.
Then you'll end it overnight, But it's up until that point, you're still horse trading to some extent. You're
Yeah.
still seeing how much. You're not sure how much the Russians are willing to give, how much you can get from the Russians. So you need to keep all of your leverage in place until that point.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the foreign aspect of Musk and X. And domestically, we noticed this a couple of weeks ago. It's become a thing now. I like the way you just papered over about Musk is more or less in government. So there's a protest movement about the fact, as the protesters say, he's not in government and no one elected him. And it's kind of mushroomed. Multiple car dealerships attacked, Cybertrucks burned, stolen, stealing wheels, keying trucks on the streets. People in like liberal cities now are basically trying to get rid of their Tesla cars because
Musk,
which tells you the scale of it. Kind of like it's spread. It's a thing, It's become like a BLM light kind of movement, where people feel emboldened because Musk is a fascist to start destroying stuff.
What's with all the posters that are getting put up and billboards about the swastika?
The swastika, is that what they call it?
That's what they're calling
The
the
Teslas?
Tesla is the swastika.
I saw it in the UK.
Yeah, it's been
Billboards, bus stops.
Yeah.
That's big money. And Musk retweeted and says who's paying for this. Good question.
That's why I'm asking, because it's a good question.
No doubt it tracks to an NGO, but NGOs are also gongos, government organized NGOs.
Yeah.
So you can probably track it back to your opponents who are screaming at you to stop slashing their favorite money faucet. When he was on Joe Rogan, we talked about, he was pretty nervous about the part where, he was realizing these money streams are coming back to sitting members of Congress. And he says in his, deadpan South African way, I hope I'm not assassinated. I mean, he's probably, he could be, and what we're seeing is everything short of it. So cyber attack on X, try to wreck his corporate interests, it's basically this is kind of like the advertising, what do they call it when the advertisers pulled out and you told them all to go fuck themselves? This is the next level up. You actually start damaging your brand so much that people won't buy it because they're scared. It's like being scared to be seen with a MAGA hat. At this pace, people will be scared to have a Tesla in certain Western cities.
Maybe.
Well, so it's one of those things where you're more likely to have those kind of incidences in places like Portland or Seattle.
True. It depends on the place.
So it depends on the place, but those would be more likely the places where you would actually have people with a Tesla. Right? Because it's the green car, it's whatever.
But it's a swastika car now.
But
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
No, we'll see.
Well, that was on the billboards and the signs on the bus stops and stuff. Like that's what, like,
Right.
you know, if you actually like read what it says, you know, it's got Elon Musk doing his
Roman salute.
his Roma salute, his fake Heil, and and it's like, you know, do away with your swastika, and like, you know,
There aren't enough
it is.
people in America for that to be significant. I mean, there aren't enough anti-Trump people in America for that to be significant. You know, I reckon Trump probably got about of the electorate, of the actual voting population. So you have to limit it to those people, because I don't think people who didn't vote in the election actually care. The very fact that they didn't vote in the election means that they don't really care. They're not going to suddenly become political radicals, go out in the street and start trashing Teslas and stuff. So it has to be limited to the number of people who actually voted in the election. And I reckon Trump probably got about 80% of the vote. So only 20% of the actual people who voted in the election, which was, what was the turnout, 55% or something like that?
I think higher, but
Say 60%.
60.
yeah,
It
somewhere.
was 60%. So 60% of 350 million, whatever, is
Say 200 for a rough
200. So, well, probably it's still a significant number of people. So 20% of 200 million people is 40 million people. But proportionally, they're not. And of course, it's not 40 million people who are going around Tesla. It's only a small, tiny percentage of that that's actually radicalized enough to go and do that. But the bottom line is they can do it, but they don't have the kind of they're not representative of the will of the American people.
Yeah.
They're only representative of a tiny percentage of a very small percentage of the American people, and therefore, democracy says, shut up, and if you're breaking the law, go to jail. And so it's not going to lead to some mass uprising because simply they don't have the numbers.
No.
Was it Pam Bondi?
Yeah, she says she's going to crack down.
Yeah, she said that she was going to find all these people and throw the book at them. So it's not likely to do anything major to the brand in that sense. Although, you know, did you see somebody on Twitter was saying that a text message from somebody who knew like Marco Rubio or something, allegedly, because Elon Musk's stock price had been going down, he was lying on the floor in Trump's lap crying.
Maybe, but that's MAGA.
Such horseshit.
By the way, I forgot to say on the Houthis thing that we started off the show with, according to Marco Rubio, the Houthis have attacked in one way or another, I suppose, or attempted to attack or attacked 174 US warships in the past 18 months. So
174. How many warships have they got? Is that the same warship several times?
Well, it's attacks. Number of attacks.
174 attacks.
Well, 174. Yeah, it can't be 174 US warships. I don't think they have that many in the Red Sea.
Still,
174 times have been attacked. So it's just
lot,
basically freedom of movement, let's say, or whatever, you know, is why Trump isn't happy about them, you know. But suck it up. That's what happens when you support Israel.
That's what the MAGA cope people have been using to justify what Trump's bombing of Yemen is the fact that, well, they're attacking us.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well, do you know why they're attacking us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not because they hate us for our freedom, unless you count the freedom to support Israel and its genocide as freedom, in which case, then yeah, they do hate us for our freedom.
Right.
True. Is the anti-Semitism thing something that could take hold in the US.
It's getting there.
I mean, it reminds me of COVID, where the US government maybe found it harder. No, they didn't. They had workarounds. They had the First Amendment, so they couldn't just do a lot of things. But there are ways around it, like Miami Herald reports Miami Beach mayor, so that's like, I suppose, a suburb of Miami. He has the authority to end a cinema lease to either one building, or maybe it's a franchise of cinemas just in his suburb of Miami, like that, because they screened some Israeli-Palestinian documentary that was not to the liking of the Israel lobby or whatever, whoever complained about it.
It might have been just...
So that kind of... Okay, so there's no First Amendment issue. In fact, he has the right as the mayor to nix a corporate contract. That's all it is. But if that shit takes off, de facto, you're creating a climate of censorship. As bad as if you had the First Amendment with an asterisk next to it and said, except for Israel. You've no free speech there. I suppose there's no point telling them how hypocritical they seem to. It just seems to be water off a duck's back to the Israel firsters. It's like Teflon.
Do you like conspiracy theories?
Love them.
That's all we traffic in, no?
Trafficking? You're a conspiracy trafficante.
See.
This guy Mahmoud Khalil. So he's the guy we talked about, detained by ICE. He's accused of being the ringleader of these campus protests, pro-Palestinian / pro-Hamas protests over the past, a couple of years or more in the US.
In Florida specifically?
No, in the US. And he's from New York, I think.
Okay.
But he's at Columbia University or whatever. But so he's been picked on as one of the ringleaders, let's say, or the organizers of these protests in New York and stuff. But he worked for the British Embassy in Syria.
No way.
I mean, he's a young guy. I think he's about 30 or so. He held a senior position at the British Embassy in Beirut for 4 years. So in Lebanon, where he worked as a program manager, and he also led the Syria Chevening program, which is the UK government's prestigious international scheme that offers fully funded scholarships to people who show potential to inspire. So
inspire what?
Inspire stuff. Well, exactly. Inspire stuff. So my conspiracy theory about him would be that he would have is basically, this is just a theory, of course, conspiracy theory, that he was an operative used by the Brits in collaboration with Israeli intelligence, because he's from the Middle East, to
be very loud,
get into the US on a visa program and all, be promoted, and to be loud and vocal and
maybe steer it a little extreme.
Well, not even extreme, but get it going, basically, to get pro-Palestinian protests going. You know what I mean? So you go like, why would the Israelis or the British, who are already pro-Israel, want to start, stimulate pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel, let's say, but primarily pro-Palestinian marches in American universities? Well, for the precise reason that they could then demonize them. It's almost like an agent provocateur. He would be the version of the guys in the black. What do they call them? What's the other word? The black. The guys who go around in black at protests. What do they call them? What's the other word? Black something. Anyway, like a black gang. I don't know what. I can't remember what the other term is.
Yeah. The anarchists.
Black bloc. Is it black bloc?
Yeah.
The black bloc. So basically, these guys, black in masks or whatever, who show up at protests and start wrecking places, start burning stuff down,
smashing
and windows and all that kind of stuff.
The police surround them and then they slip through the police.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So he would be a kind of political version, or a protest, a version of one of those, except he would be used to really push and promote and organize pro-Palestinian marches or protests in American universities in order to justify clampdown, which is what those black boy guys do. They break windows so then the police can come and beat up protesters and demonize the whole protest. You want to demonize the protests. So Israel knows that it's going to provoke some kind of level of discontent and protest amongst students and amongst Americans, decent Americans, let's say, because of their massive genocide campaign in Gaza. So in order to... Okay, sorry for the interlude. If you can still... Okay, sorry for the interlude. If you can still hear us. Can you still hear us? I don't care. I'm just talking to Adam anyway.
All right. We got an indeed from Donald.
Yeah, so I was just saying basically this guy would, the idea is that basically, I mean, it's not a out there idea like people do this where they ship
4 years in the British Embassy.
Yeah, but even just the theory of putting someone in position or putting people in position
who you nab first.
Yeah, to shape a narrative, to establish a narrative before it gets going organically. You want to establish it artificially and have some. Well, you're taking the organic or natural grassroots kind of like sentiment against something, and you're directing it through one particular person who you control so that you can direct the narrative in a certain way, and then
and maybe
and clamp down on it, demonize it,
maybe the Americans saw that, went take him out first, not because they're part of the plan, but they see what's been worked out here, deport him,
because it's destabilizing. Yeah, it could be that Trump
is a genuine agitator.
He's a genuine foreign agent.
Yes,
it doesn't matter that he's an agent of the Brits and the Israelis. Let's say, he's still an agent that we don't want to deal with that shit anymore. We don't want to have that kind of shit going on in our country. Anything. I mean, we're here to make America great again, right? We want to keep things stable in the country, and we don't want, in the same way, we don't want our foreign NGOs interfering in other countries and paying for other countries. Operations or paying for anything within other countries. You also don't want other countries doing that within America. Because people don't think about the return. Like, I mean, people focusing on US aid, all this money from US aid going to facilitate programs and gender fucking, operas and shit, and gender bender operas in different countries and stuff. What's the flip side of that? I mean, is there any comeback? Does that only happen outwards from America?
No.
Or do other countries do that in America?
Or does America do that in America?
Or does America do that in America? Well, yes, of course it does.
Yeah.
We know that from Doge, right? I mean, it's the same thing that they're promoting, the gender bender, diversity, DEI stuff that they're promoting in other countries. Obviously, at the same time, that's been heavily promoted in the US, so obviously it was happening in the US. But I wonder to what extent other countries, and here I'm looking at you, Israel, even though you're not Israel, but if you were Israel, I'd be looking at you.
Yucky.
The one with the
dreidel.
The one country with the longest history of that kind of interference, particularly in America, but in other countries. What kind of shit are they up to? And if you're going, I mean, you could talk about various different things, but one thing you would certainly talk about would be shaping American public opinion around
100%
around Palestinians and Arabs and the Middle East in general.
That's Israel's interest, but the Brits too. I mean, they had this countering digital hate scheme where the ex-chief of staff of, or current chief of staff, the Irish guy of Starmer, is heading up this thing in Washington about how we're going to kill Musk Twitter during the election campaign.
That's right, yeah.
So yeah,
it's a big nest.
That's what I'd love to see. I mean, that's where you hold out hope for MAGA, because maybe they're going to use the narrative of Hamas terrorists pouring over the border, and actually what you're going to see selectively deported in this sphere anyway, besides any mass deportations of illegals, are operatives of allies who are actually trying to keep the revolution going in the US, which undermines MAGA. That'd be the most logical thing for a genuinely MAGA effort in the US government to try to do. And they can sell it to the press to keep an even keel as we're getting rid of whatever, Hamas and lefties and people can be up in arms. Jesus, Trump really is just, he must hate Gaza. Whatever, let them think that. But actually he's targeting, that's what you hope. Because there was a time not long ago where that happened. I mean, even right after 9/11, the US hadn't fully synced with Israel yet. One of the first, they arrested a lot of people from the Middle East. They arrested dozens of Israelis too, and they were gone. They wanted to keep them, but they made a deal and they were sent home. The Mossad moving companies and Israeli art students. So they need to go back to those days.
But here's one from the archives.
Yeah. Trump bragged he had intelligence on Macron's sex life. He should share it with Candace Owens. The FBI seized the document. Yeah. I read it, and yeah, the Elysee Palace was freaking out, was the quote.
You see what's going on in protests in Serbia?
Yes, big one today. People are like, oh my God, it's a Maidan. I'm not sure. I think I zoomed in on some footage from it, and there's a lot of nationalist slogan, flags, Orthodox stuff as well. It's a mix. It's not an EU flag waving. I don't think it's a Maidan thing.
No.
This has been growing for a while.
Yeah.
As an anti-corruption movement.
Yeah.
And it began with the shock and the trauma of a modern building project that collapsed on a bunch of people. I think it was at a train station. Yeah.
Novi Sad railway station.
Yeah.
In November last year. It was the awning, concrete kind of awning outside the entrance to it that fell on a lot of students using it, because Novi Sad would be the second biggest or second most important or whatever city in Serbia after Belgrade, and a lot of students using it and stuff. So it's mainly students, but also other people have joined in because these protests have been going on since November last year, about 3 or 4 months now, it seems to be genuine, but just against corruption, because, well, the timeline of it is this. It was a Chinese company that redid this railway station that, you know, was a kind of historic building in the centre of Novi Sad, and the government announced the kind of renewal or refurbishment of it several years ago, and then after a while, in November last year, the awning collapsed. Then they demanded killing 15 people, and they demanded a lot of protests about general corruption. It's kind of weird in a certain sense, because you don't see protests of this nature about things like this. Although you imagine, like, in a more normal world, people would be protesting about this kind of thing. You know, in other countries just suck it up, but the Serbians, especially the students, that was the kind of final straw, if you know what I mean, in terms of like their perception of corruption in the Serbian government and stuff, and there being a bunch of dirty politicos who don't give a shit. And so they wanted to see all the documents about the contract for this refurbishment of the railway station, and who was involved and who signed off on it and who the workers were and all that kind of stuff. And the government was delaying and was releasing, okay, here's the documents. And then they protested more and said, that's bullshit, that's not all the documents, we want more documents. And eventually the government kept releasing more documents and saying, that's them all. And then but they also there's that. So they want transparency regarding this Chinese-led renovation project that preceded the collapse, the deadly collapse in November. They want and then as part of the protests that were inspired by that collapse and the death of those people, protesters were arrested and put in prison. So they want them released, and they want prosecution of the individuals who were used to attack the protesters, because the government was using kind of like irregular, not exactly policemen, but like, different, thugs basically to go out and kind of like agent provocateurs in a certain sense. They want them exposed and arrested, and they also wanted, because it's students, they want an increase in the higher education budget of 20%. So it's like, it seems so banal in a certain sense compared to other countries in terms of what the kind of stuff that goes on, and most other countries would just suck that up and wouldn't care about it. But the Serbians seem to be really determined to actually to not back down from this. They've just decided that this one thing is they're going to use it as, and like I said, it's largely students, but there's other people and other sections of the community getting involved, and they're not backing down. And I don't know what they want. I think they just want to change the government. Basically, they want, and they refuse any association with the opposition or anything like that. They're basically saying, look, this isn't affiliated with any political party. There's no political agenda here. There's an anti-corruption agenda, and it's the people against corruption in the government. And so they disavow any flag waving from any other country. Yeah. No English signs, no Ukrainian flags, no European flags, no American flags, none of that bullshit.
It reminds me of Yellow Vests.
Yeah,
in being more organic and a genuinely pissed off public.
Yeah,
and sometimes the stars. That's often the case, but sometimes the stars align and they're on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
it's tricky for Serbia. I mean, my sympathies with the government in general from an international point of view, because they're at least not Slavo-Ukraini.
Yeah,
although they would like to be in the EU, I think.
Yeah,
the people don't
really care. No, they've got more important things to focus on. They're very nationalistic. Serbs are very, very patriotic and very nationalistic. So I think as long as it doesn't get co-opted by some group,
which is always a risk,
which is always a possibility. But the interesting thing is that the government has been using LRAD, basically microwave weapons. It seems
the sound
microwaves. I think against
crowd dispersal.
It's basically anti-personality crowd.
I saw
devices.
A video of it.
Yeah,
did you
I have them here. Yeah,
I didn't believe it. It seemed
put that one,
not this one. I saw something else. They're just standing there silent.
Yeah, they were doing minutes of silence, and then you see this girl looking back. I think this girl turns around in the foreground there. What's this?
Wow.
And then there's this one. They all just clear the street, and you can see it better in this one. So the reason they're all standing there quietly with their phones lit up and stuff, that's part of these protests. It's to for a minute's silence or whatever.
For the victims of the...
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's high on the profile of the whole thing. But this one you get a better idea of it. So it's a main street. It's all lined up.
Yeah, this is the one I saw. And then...
just parting the Red Sea.
That's crazy.
Well, some people in the middle there seem to be a bit immune to it. But maybe it's just a pulse, it just happens initially. And you also have to allow for the kind of contagion in a certain sense, where people at the front might feel it and everybody splits. Mm-hmm. Because they'd be wary of cars.
Apparently
car ramming.
A car did injure 3 people.
So if I'm in a crowd and I'm somewhere near the front or whatever, or a bit back or in the middle or whatever, and the people in front of me all start to split off the road, well, I'm going to go too. That doesn't mean that whole crowd was all affected by some kind of anti-crowd device, because the rest of them would just split as well when they see other people splitting, because there's other reasons that they might be doing that. But there's enough videos, I think, to because there's no car coming along. You can see in the distance there's no car, there's no sound of a car or whatever. That wasn't what provoked it. So people are saying that it was the use of some kind of and it does. There's other videos you can see of people using these, of companies that make them and all that kind of stuff, and it does tend to make you want to just get the fuck out of there. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
It kind of heats up your skin, basically.
Right.
Feel like you're burning, basically.
It doesn't.
Like,
It doesn't make a sound.
No, there's acoustic devices that make a very loud sound.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, but you would hear that.
Yeah. So is that fair game for a government to do that?
Not really, no.
I mean,
when people are out in the street protesting for legitimate reasons, and government mightn't like it or whatever, but you shouldn't just be
no
randomly
during the moment of silence.
Yeah, exactly. Shooting microwaves at them, Yeah.
Meanwhile, in Serbia's neighboring country, Romania, last Sunday after our show, we were flabbergasted that they had told Georgescu that he can't run. No, he couldn't rally until the day before the election.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then they just banned him outright.
Mm-hmm.
That was last Sunday. And now another Romanian has been banned from running because democracy. I shit you not. They've banned, and she's not the same party. He's maybe they call him far right. He's a nationalist party. She is a member of something else. Let me find this. Her name's Diana Soshos. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Soshwaska, I think. SOSOACA. She's a member of the SOS Romania party. That's her just before banning. She said, I'm going to fight the government. This is great. Not pretty cool. Instead of a chainsaw, she's wearing boxing gloves. She's a feisty character, right? So in this AP News report, they say she's been banned from running in Romania's now deferred elections for the presidential election in May. The quote is, for making declarations contrary to democratic values. And the AP write-up here goes on to say that Romania's constitutional court argued that her public discourse, including opposition to Romania's European Union membership and its NATO membership, made her unfit to uphold the constitutional obligations of the presidency. Isn't that interesting? So Romania's constitution is the EU constitution, is NATO constitution. You cannot run against them.
Bizarre.
You cannot run against them. That's the actual legal stance they're taking. That the Supreme Court of Romania.
That the EU constitution and
NATO. Of which there isn't. There is none.
Exactly.
It's a treaty organization. They tried to have an EU constitution and it failed because it failed to pass popular referenda in the 2000s. So instead, what they have is they call it the EU constitution in quotes. It's not actually a legal, so it's a mutual treaty of the 27 members. Well, that's just utter bullshit legalese. Here's where, so you think, well, I don't know much about this person. Maybe she is kind of nuts, right? Get this. She's currently a duly elected member of the European Parliament. She sits in Brussels and Strasbourg, and has been at least since the Euro elections last year. And her political party, SOS Romania, won 24 seats in Romania's parliamentary election in December. That party got 7% of the vote. And I don't know much about them, but their slogan is "Make Europe and Romania Great Again." Banned for discourse contrary to democratic values. I mean, we're in the twilight zone. Like,
yeah,
we've gone, and Romania is a great case study because you'd like to think that they're smart enough to go, okay, well, this is an extraordinary measure. Kalin Georgescu is a particular threat. He's super popular. He's Putin-like. NATO, the big base, the war in Ukraine. Let's just nix him this once. But no, within 4 days, we'll nix her too. And it'll snowball from here. It could. And not just in Romania.
That's I mean, when you have to resort to those kind of blatant tactics, like, I mean, the end is nigh. Like.
Yeah. Well, there was one, I think it was last week, there was one, I think it was the speech that Macron was giving about how they were going to continue supporting Ukraine, and there was a few other things that he was talking about. And I could not shake the feeling that I was in 1984. And I don't mean that in like a comparative way. I mean, like, I felt like I was literally in Oceania.
Yeah.
Like watching Big Brother tell me
that Emmanuel Goldstein's the enemy.
Yeah. And we've always been at war with...
'Twas always so.
Yeah.
With Oceania.
It was just super bizarre. So all of the stuff's just keeping me in that Orwellian nightmare. Here's
another one from Australia. The Australian government just passed a really dubious hate speech law. It's strong. I think it's like it's even stronger than the Irish one, which failed, and has been shelved temporarily. Again, the let me see if we've got the Australia enacts tough hate speech law amid anti-Semitism surge. Scroll down and see if I can get the gist of what was particularly strong about it. A new law banning the display of hate symbols and minimum sentences for certain terror offenses. I can't. What was the particular? Yeah, this isn't the best article to have cited. Sorry about this, folks, because it's actually a look at the legal, where the law fits within Australia's criminal code and stuff. But yeah, it's super strong, right? So the thing is, this was passed, and anti-Semitism is mentioned. These are the circumstances in which it passed. I think sometime in February. Just in the 2 or 3 weeks before it was passed, there was a foiled terror attack in which they found.
Oh yeah.
This is actually an update about the story, but it happened in February. BBC headline: explosive-laden caravan plot was a hoax, say Australian police. If you scroll down, it will give us the gist of how it was reported at the beginning. So it was a caravan found packed with explosives in outer Sydney earlier this year. It was found on January 19th, contained enough explosives to produce a 40-meter wide blast, along with a note displaying anti-Semitic messages, which the new hate speech law specifically cited as what we need to legislate against, and the list of Jewish synagogues. Well, shit. It was fabricated, concocted by criminals, and elsewhere they report as organized crime. Who are they? They won't say.
Yeah.
But you know where I'm going with this.
Who else is going to be there?
It's discovery following a spate, because it wasn't a single incident. It's discovery following a spate of anti-Semitic attacks in Australia triggered widespread panic. No, it didn't, but it triggered government crackdown on free speech.
Gee,
yeah,
desperate.
It's desperate.
That's
it's naked. It's
imagine being
Twilight Zone.
Imagine being an Australian politician. You know, like of British or Irish or Scottish, mainly English, Irish, or Scottish stock, going back, a couple of 100 years at most. 200 years ago, your predecessors were living in the Northern Hemisphere, right? Of white Christian European heritage, and now you're down in Australia, in the arse end of the world, and you're desperate to pass laws that prevent 20 million Australians from saying hurty things about Israel. That you're willing to go to those extremes, because that undoubtedly was, to one extent or another, or in some way, a government operation.
Did she use the language in her presentation? Did she use the language of false flag? or was it?
Fabricated terror plot concocted by criminals.
Same thing.
Yeah,
And organized crime. Organized crime.
but it's all right.
The farce of it is that now I have a video here. We won't bother playing it. I'll read the statement. Australia's politicians in government and in opposition are having to get out in front of the media to say, quote, "It's a poor turn of events that people are now downplaying any threat to the Jewish community." So they're berating them for being anti-Semitic, in quotes, after they concocted a plot to contrive anti-Semitism to pass this fucking hate speech law, which is it's passed, it's enacted. And now you've got the chatter online has gone up and people are like, what are them Jews up to? Which is what you were trying to avoid.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
What do you call it? The Barbra Streisand effect, isn't it?
Yeah.
yeah.
The more you're not allowed to talk about it, the more.
And they don't
People are gonna
seem to
talk
realize that. Like
Yeah.
they don't seem to realize by going through these ridiculous. I mean, such a sloppy operation, like for it to be exposed after the fact that it was false.
Yeah.
Because really, like government wants to pass an anti-Semitism law that's controversial because it's quite extreme strictures on free speech.
Yeah.
And then in the process of trying to get that law passed, someone
just so happens.
plants a bomb with anti-Semitic
Slogans
on the outside of the bomb, and they go, look, see, now do you want the law passed? And then afterwards, it's like, oh, that was false. Oh, that was a false, a fabricated plot. Well, by who? You maybe?
Yeah.
You bunch of assholes that want to pass this censorship law.
This is Australia, remember, during COVID?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And what the hell is the Australian government doing? I mean, what concern is it of theirs if some Australians say that
Naughty things.
Yeah, them Israelis, they kind of like they're killing a lot of Palestinians, aren't they? Anti-Semitism, shut him down. You know, I mean, really?
Yeah.
What power is there over? Or what's in the minds of those politicians? Like I said, down in the arse of nowhere, the arse end of the world, that no one really cares about much and doesn't have much influence. Got 20 million people. It's this big chunk of desert that 20 million freaking European expats are living on. And
Well, it's fairly diverse these days.
eating shrimp and
But what's like? Don't even
Barbies.
go with just the Israeli aspect of it. Just have it go like full. Like what's wrong with having somebody think that that Hitler was the greatest human to have ever lived? What would be so bad? Like what's so like wrong about a person thinking something that's utterly ridiculous and stupid? Like if it's ridiculous and stupid and wrong, it's not going to gain any traction.
Exactly.
right. So why
So
clamp
there's
down
no
on it?
harm.
Right.
When the Yellow Vest rebellion in France was in full swing, the media began to say anti-Semitism, even though there was no flavor to that at all.
Mhm.
But they parlay, and then quickly they got some agents provocateurs to say and do crazy things on the streets among the protesters. But I think what they were getting at was maybe it's just a useful ruse for them to a stick to beat people's back into submission with, because as soon as they're talking about a conspiracy of even just corporations and politicians to oppress us, or they don't have our best interests at all, anything that smacks of the government doing bad shit, evil, in fact, if you use the term evil at all, you're tending into an area that the government goes, you know, we're losing them here. And anti-Semitism is a super useful way
To start the process.
for non-Israel related issues.
Mhm.
To set a precedent in a sense.
Yes,
Okay.
you know.
You bring people
Yeah.
along, you know. Accept this.
I remember
and
it being said about Bannon and Trump in late 2016 during the campaign. You know, those speeches about the banking system and, you know, the globalists have had it out for us. It's all dog whistles, really, for the Jews. I mean, you all know that. The Atlanticist was madly typing that all out. You know, he means us, right?
Christ is King is just a dog whistle for I hate Jews.
That's another
Right,
expression
yeah,
of it now, yeah.
So you can't say anything but it's anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Israel related or
Is
not.
saying the
Yeah.
word anti-Semitism anti-Semitic?
No. Depends how you say
Not
it.
if it's government approved.
I just feel like
Down with the bankers,
Where's the end?
you anti-Semite.
Because if you can't even say Christ is king because it's an anti-Semitic dog whistle, and you're in ostensibly Christian nations, then like where's the end? Like any word at all is a dog whistle at that point.
Can be, yeah. Yeah, anyway. Anything else?
What,
Don't jump ship. What?
it kind of went nowhere fast, but that ship incident off England, the allision, as I learned, it wasn't a collision. An allision is a shipping term when you have two ships and one is stationary, anchored, and the other one hits it. It's called an allision. Learned that this week. That was it was a clear day. One big cargo ship careened into the other one.
Captain was Russian.
Captain was
That's all you
Russian.
need to know.
Problem solved.
I heard about that Putin.
But they didn't run with that. I didn't turn into an international media.
Yeah,
what the Russians up to? Because the ship in question that was hit wasn't just an oil tanker. What caught my attention was that its crew was all American.
Yeah.
23 crew. I'm like, all American. That's it's listed as it's part of a special fleet that services US bases
Yeah, jet fuel.
with jet fuel.
Full of jet fuel.
So there's a military tie-in with the US there, off the British coast, while the shit's going on with Russia. The captain's Russian.
Yeah.
Anyway, for now it's been parked, but
Putin's stealing children from Ukraine and crashing ships into American ships, crashing the ships into American ships.
So he stole the 6,000 children in order to give them fake passports and certificates, so the kids could impersonate ship captains.
There you go. That's what it is.
And
Definitely.
then go destroy all of the jet fuel that was going to go to Ukraine.
There you go. You got it all wrapped up.
Solved.
Nice bow. Done. Put that in the paper. Breaking news.
we're running out of conspiracy theory. We're going to need some new ones.
Yeah.
Adam solved them all.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. We'll leave it there. You know why? Do you know that you should never shout into a colander? Do you know why?
It's grating.
No, not quite.
It's holy.
You'll strain your voice.
Oh, good lord.
Score. Adam loved that
I'm
one.
out of here.
Adam loved that one.
Taxi.
Adam couldn't help but love that one.
I couldn't help but laugh.
All right, folks, we're going to leave it there for this week. We hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for watching, commenting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back next week with another show on whatever bullshit's been going on between now and then. So until then, have a good one. See ya. Bye.
Bye, Al.
Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.